Welcome back to Last Week Chopped Up. I'm here with my boy Jeremy, as we always do. Jeremy, in the oasis that is the United States, in the midst of NBA playoffs, with all the normalcy I feel coming from the continent. How are you doing, man? How is Hot Vac Summer checking in on that Hot Vac Summer?
Man, yeah, I feel like I'm a bit of a disappointment on my hot facts updates. Didn't do too much last week, man. Went to the driving range, played a little tennis, just trying to get active, but not in these streets turning up. So I don't know. I guess I got to double down for this week since I didn't get too wild last week. It's like, hey, we gotta live up to this hot back summer name that is used on everything. So I don't know if you can get John Oliver out there, but he had a great little, 1 minute segment of all the like local news and different organizations dropping hot vac summer, hot vac summer. People been like, what does this even mean? They're like, well, the Megan the Stallion song last year, Hot Girl Summer and Vax, and then usually people being extremely confused. It's like, okay, people are vaccinated and summer's gonna be crazy. That's all it means.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I don't think you need to be going out every weekday to do your part as an American. I know you want to do your patriotic duty. I know you want to be part of the Hot Vac Summer and answer the call, but I don't know. I think maybe playing a little tennis and hanging it is part of Hot Vac Summer too. And we're actually my wife and I are getting our vaccine this week, so we're gonna hopefully get a little European Vac Summer going too, and certainly the mood's improving out here. Things are finally in motion, but it's an interesting week last week.
What you
got?
Ask you real quick though. The big thing out here is what team are you on with your vaccine?
Well, funnily enough, yeah. So it's going to be Pfizer or Moderna. They didn't tell us. It's one of those two. And so, yeah, we don't know what squad we're on. I texted my boy David about this, and I was like, "Oh, I'm getting one." He's like, "I hope we can be Pfizer bros." And I told Lisa, I'm like, "What do you mean What world are we living in now?" But I didn't know. It's like, yeah, we Pfizer bros. I was like, I want to be back to normal bros. But yeah, so I didn't know what squad are you on, Jeremy?
Oh, I'm a Team J&J,
Okay.
one and done, baby.
Okay.
We in and out.
Okay. Okay. I didn't realize the loyalty. So yeah, no, we're gonna be. I'll tell you, and I'll tell the choppers out there when tomorrow. I get on tomorrow, and Lissa gets it on Friday. So I hopefully we get the same one. I hate when it has to have a little inter-family, lack of teaming on that one, right? So I don't know.
I have heard the second shot hits different depending on. I think Moderna is the one I think supposed to slap that second shot. So,
Okay.
yeah, it'll be funny if y'all do get different ones and see how the second one takes effect on y'all.
I will tell you, in the Dutch healthcare system, questions are not a huge part of the situation. It's a very different system. Doesn't matter what language you're speaking. So I will assure you, I'll tell you this. I doubt I'll have any choice in the matter, but now I know which one to be pulling for, to be pulling for that sweet, sweet Pfizer. But no, it's not. It's a very different. Let's put it this way. The Netherlands, the customer is not always right. That you can be at a restaurant. We got to bring you out here again. You can be at a restaurant and you can just sit there like 30 minutes. Nothing happened. No one comes to you, whatever. You wave them down. Say, "Hey, can I order?" And they say, "Oh yeah, absolutely." As if you hadn't just been sitting there. It's the weirdest thing. And it's not a European thing. It's a Dutch thing. It's a Netherlands thing. It's very much, and everyone complains about it. But it's like, I don't know. Maybe we should tip people more. But
It's funny you bring that up because now different businesses or things are coming back to normal and kind of figuring out, well, what do we keep that we've adopted
Right.
since we had to deal with coronavirus. And I'm hearing more restaurants are thinking of keeping here. There's some where like the QR codes on your table to order, and it is for your table. So it's like you literally walk in, sit down, boom, order, and just stuff starts showing up. Like you don't have to wait for anyone. And some restaurants are like, you know what, this is actually working out. Like, order as soon as you want, get your drinks as fast as we could crank them out. You're not waiting for a human to come up and ask you something. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's do some more of that.
No, I'm 100% here for it. I'll give up the what do you think is good everything for like I'll give up that conversation for like the stuff we're selling is good. Not I'll tell you whatever you want. So I'll give up that conversation for
now. You know what? So now I'm just thinking of business. Is it now like an add-on, an additional service if you want a human to actually come take your order or give you suggestions like, oh, you got to have the premium reservation, dog. That's another $5 or $10 on your order if you want someone to give you advice.
I would be honest with you. I don't think you want to get data to this question because I don't think a lot of people are paying more. Like if you know what I mean? Like I think it could go the other way. It would be like, hey, the default experience is there's a wait staff, and the upgraded experience is you have an instant connection to the kitchen for all your whims and desires with the QR code. I think that people would pay the other direction.
Right? See, I don't know, man. You're taking your girl on date night. You're like, oh, baby girl, I thought ahead. I got us to talk to a human. What's today's special?
All right.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, yeah. What is the greatest wine pairing with my salmon tartar? I don't know, man. I'm just
No,
freestyling,
I'm
but
with you. I'm with you. We went to a Portuguese place last night. And it was actually one of those perfect balances where the guy came over and he's like, "What do you want, meat or fish?" It's like, "Oh, fish. Okay, I'd recommend this Portuguese dish. It's going to be so dope. It's served to people." We're like, "Okay, yeah, we're going with you. We don't know Portuguese food that well. We're 100% on." But there's the other extreme where they're basically just telling you the whole time how good the food is, where you're like, hey, this was sourced from this farm. It's the beautiful view on the farm, and it's this and that. I'm like, yeah, I get it. You're very proud of this, but I'm cool. It's a taco at the end of the day, you know.
yeah,
And
right.
so like I want that, but that was actually perfect. I would take that over the QR code system. But for a lot of restaurants, especially ones I've been to, I will tell you, I'm down just to order, and I know what I want, and it's cool. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but it's cool. I'm cool with it, you know.
Right? You're just like, I'll take the fish taco plate. Thank you. That
Yeah,
that is all.
that's all. It's all. No, but out here, I mean, you know, in the U.S., if you walk out of a restaurant for not being served, that's a very. I can't remember ever doing it in the U.S. If like sit down, no one ever comes to you. 20 minutes later, you have to be like, let's just roll. Pre-COVID, we this is a monthly. Like I'm not even exaggerating. Sit down, no one comes to you, whatever. No one serves you, and you just have to leave. This is a common occurrence in the Netherlands, and it's not. It's just here, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's something you have to watch out for. You're like, but why? Like we want to buy stuff, like, but why?
Yeah,
It,
it's like I'm trying to throw euros at you. Please take them.
it's just what you know what it's just one of those. But I'm interested to see if this catches on here because I would definitely. There's a few restaurants that do it, but now that I think of it, it's like yeah, I would go to that. But yeah, to your point, yeah, maybe you get that pay ahead, or the people start advertising like that human service, and it's on the Google Maps, like all human service. There'll be some sorting of what do you like, you know, how do you like it. But yeah, I will tell you, that's some of these things that precipitate from COVID will be interesting. The work from home, the flexible hours, that will be interesting. I think you know there's been a lot of societal change in between this in this period as well, with income inequality being brought to a forefront, where there's a lot of social programs in the U.S. that we always said we couldn't do. I mean, there are kids getting lunches delivered at home. You know, we always said we couldn't do that. Well, why can't dinners be delivered if you can't? You know, there's a lot of things that have happened. The stimulus programs have immiserated poverty in a way that we're doing much more aggressively during this period. How much of that sticks around? How much of the New Deal, the Great Society that came out of both the Great Depression and Vietnam War and civil rights, that were all these social programs, came out of times of strife? Or how much of it just goes away? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know, man. Like I'm gonna have a full on. I'm in my 30s comment here. I was listening to an NPR
All
podcast,
right. Yeah.
and one of the topics they actually brought up was, yeah, as I think you said, more flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And obviously some of the things, kids getting food delivered at home, but how this change might actually accelerate the income disparities we have because, people like me and you that work in tech and we can work from anywhere with a computer and
Yeah.
internet. We have a lot more freedoms, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I mean, outside of being trapped in your house all the time, it's like, oh, it's been great. It's making workplaces realize
Yeah.
that employees want freedom. And if you're a workplace that doesn't provide that, you might now have to compete with the tech company next door that does to let me live how I want. Where if you're a Amazon
Mm,
delivery driver, or as
sure.
we're ordering more things online, it's like, yeah, this has not done much for you, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just out there in the street. So it's one aspect I guess I hadn't fully thought of. Just it's giving people with privilege maybe more privilege.
That's. I
you know
mean,
and I guess the real question is, will this tide kind of raise the floor even if you aren't in tech? Like, even
yeah.
if tech people get more, if it makes the floor of everyone higher, is that bad? So I don't know, it's not one I've really sat and thought about a lot, but it did make me go like, huh, okay, I'll come back to this thought later. I hadn't really
Yeah.
thought of that perspective.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one to think about, and and some of the proposals from the Biden administration on universal pre-K and how important we know that education at that stage is so important for reducing inequality and developmental outcomes, how those are paired against, to your point, that knowledge workers will have increasing geographic flexibility and will have an increasing amount of freedom, and if not from a pay perspective, from a utilization perspective, and from a life perspective in terms of the standards that are brought to bear for work, start differing more and more. I mean, it's I hadn't thought about it. We should definitely take it up. And we saw, for instance, last week or this past week that the Biden administration, along with the G7 nations, came to an agreement for a 15% global minimum corporate tax, which is, I don't think would have happened without the pandemic, because these countries at this point are just like, look, we've raced to the bottom on tax rates for overseas firms. We've screwed ourselves out of a ton of revenue. And now we just have to bring ourselves together and say, let's stop this prisoner's dilemma of allowing our each other's firms to hide profits in each other's countries, right? It's all happening in plain sight, right? And so would that happen without these countries going broke from all these social programs? I don't know,
Now, I know there was an agreement, but we're a long way away from where agreement to this is practically done. And, I don't fully know it, but like Ireland, I assume they were not a part of this, because the last articles I read, they're like, yeah, we're not setting a floor. We're going to do whatever we want. Screw you, America. Like, we're going to set our own tax rate.
That's correct.
And, there's a lot of making profits flow through that country to reduce your tax rate all around. So if everyone doesn't get down with this, how does that not just say, all right, well, everyone's now just going to have some existence in Ireland and a subsidiary, and that's where you're going to run your profits through to actually pay less taxes? Like, I think it's one thing to have the headline of a 15% minimum, and then there's the practicalities of like, okay, what's really going to happen here?
The way it's intended to work, this Ireland case, is that to claim those profits, for example, in the G7 nation security exchanges, there would have to be 15% tax paid on them somewhere. Now, the question is where. It wouldn't be in Ireland, because by construction example, let's imagine their corporate tax rate is 0, to make it simple. So 15% would have to get paid somewhere, or it couldn't be realized for a publicly traded company. Now, it doesn't solve every loophole, but most of these companies are publicly traded. So if you're doing your SEC filings and you want to say I made $1 billion profit, you have to show you paid 15% minimum tax somewhere, somehow. Now, that question would be, I think you're making a good point, is how do you decide where? Now, if it's, let's say, Apple Computing, they have an Irish subsidiary. Now, for the computers they sell in Europe, now we'll say they cannot claim that profit without paying 15%. Do they owe 7.5% to the U.S. because they're an American company, and 7.5% to the European G7? Like, how does it get split up? It still needs to get worked out, But the idea would be that even if Ireland or St. Kitts or Bermuda or whatever didn't get on board, you just couldn't realize the money. You couldn't distribute it to investors. You couldn't use it. It would not be blessed to be part of the financial systems of these countries. That's the idea. So it's now it still faces some uphill battles. There's a lot of things to think about. The corporate tax rate in the U.S. right now is 21%. Biden is proposing making it 27%. It used to be 35%. In France, I believe it's 27%. So there's still a game of, it still pays to hide the profit, right? It just doesn't pay as much. And France and a few other countries have also said, like, hey, is this enough? And will we be able to sort it out with each other and solve these issues? But it's a long way from getting done, but there's at least a plan in there to deal with that case. Now, the islands of the world, what do? What if they start giving people electricity? What if they start doing this? You could still imagine competing for these companies in a way that's effectively a subsidy that makes us, in a way that's not healthy. It's sort of like, let's take it to sports teams. You think, is it fair for municipal taxpayers to build stadiums for billionaire owners? On the face of it,
absolutely not.
Absolutely not. That's absolutely insane, right? But then if you think, there's always 4 fringe cities on the verge of getting the next big NFL team or NBA team. Those 4 cities are designed to compete with each other in a prisoner's dilemma style game. Will they bid taxpayer money to get those teams? Yes, because ultimately the league has created scarcity and they've created a bidding war. It's not fair. The only way to stop that is not to ask Cleveland not to bid. It's to say, hey, there's a law, municipal money can't go towards this, so we'll break it at its core. This doesn't quite go that far, but it's the same idea, and that's one I think we should also think about. Yeah, it's absolutely not fair, but it will continue to happen as long as you create this competition, race to the bottom. In this case, it's a race in the case for building the stadiums, it's a race to the top. So it's an interesting one, man. I don't know. I wonder. We'll see. I'll be
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I think we'll have to do many check-ins on this as we
Yeah.
try to make this high-level goal into a reality.
Yeah.
Like I said, a lot of details to be hammered out here.
No, yeah, it's a good first step and one that it will be interesting to see. The kind of tax revenues the U.S. could get from it are estimated to be meaningful. Maybe 80 billion even at the start of the program, which is a good chunk of money, obviously. And so, not these companies aren't going to go down lightly, right? That comes from somewhere, and it hasn't affected the equity markets in a big way. So anything you see, like in principle, this should lower dividends for a lot of these companies hiding money. Well, those stocks didn't drop, so then now this pessimist says, well, must not be that big a deal. I don't know. We'll see. I'm optimistic, but I agree it's early days.
Early days, right? Now, it's funny thinking about like the tax rate of businesses, and I think of my personal effective tax
I
rate.
know.
I'm like, can I make a Jeremy subsidiary in Ireland to help me reduce my own tax rate?
Honestly, the trick. I mean, you can make a Jeremy specific in the United States. One of the tricks that's still done is you become yourself a Jeremy consulting firm. You sell your own labor. You buy and you get investors into that firm, and you then declare a capital gain on the firm. You get multiple funding rounds on yourself effectively for the person that's paying you. And so
Mhm.
all of the returns are really a capital gain on the appreciation of your firm, Jeremy Consulting. But that's always just based on you working for them. And then you sell the firm back to them at the end of the consulting engagement at a capital gain. Because they invested at a million and you sold it back to them for 5, and so you made 4 million in capital gains. And when you sell it back to them, maybe you say part of the sale is you'll be exclusively work for them for 2 years. This is not a hypothetical. This is what happens. So
I'm going to say, just sounds like you're speaking of this with some exact knowledge.
I've never
Have you
done
maybe
it.
flirted with this before?
I've never done it, but I've seen it done. Yes, I've seen it done, and I've talked to people that have done it. And so you turn labor income into a capital gain, which in a way that ultimately is dishonest, but within the letter of the law. And that's what these companies are doing, right? And so that's what the sort of hedge fund loophole has always been, where you sort of, like you said, labor income is taxed very heavily. But when you look at this and people say, hey, millionaires on their income, tens of millionaires pay less labor income than a nurse. And you ask why? It's always effectively been hiding it as capital gains, and capital gains being taxed at 20% or lower. And then there's always been the argument of let's tax capital gains low because we don't want to punish companies for succeeding and investing in winners. Well, that sort of sounds right, but then how it's used a lot is this. Yeah, so there's, when Ross Perot was around when we were kids, and these flat taxes, when I was in graduate school as an economist, one of the interesting things was many economists, maybe even most macroeconomists, feel that a flat tax with a starting tax credit. So the way this works is the tax rate is 20% for all income earned, but you start with a $10,000 credit. So by that example, $50,000 of earnings, you owe no taxes because you start with $10,000 and you just eat into that. In fact, you can imagine with basic income, you start with just $10,000 being given to you, and you earn $50,000, and that means you get zero from the government, and beyond that, and you maybe get no tax. So, and why do they believe in these flat taxes? Effectively, it creates capital gains 20%, income 20%, and with and corporate tax 20%. The main reason being is you eliminate all of these machinations to race to the lower number, because accountants have always proven smart enough to turn any kind of income into the one that's taxed the least, and so you can sort of imagine. So that's why, and it sounds crazy. Like, why would well, that's why it could be better. So we'll see. It's one of those things. It's like old idea, but could be powerful. But it's never really been brought up it's always been brought up in like a, like Herman Cain's of the world bring it up, or Ross Perot's. They're not, in my opinion, the most serious characters,
I imagine our current environment, if someone were to mention that on the blue side, the red side would just scream bloody socialist murder or something
Exactly.
like that.
Exactly. So it's never, yeah, it's not right now politically viable, but it's an interesting one to think about. It's interesting to think about, but I don't know, thinking about how all of this COVID changes. You talked last year about how the NBA was your friend in the lockdown and how you really
Yeah.
embraced that. Now
Yeah.
the NBA playoffs are back. Fans are in the stands most places, not always sold out, et cetera, but to a certain extent. And it's like the most exciting NBA playoffs in recent memory because you have a total reshifting of the competitive dynamics. But are they still your friends? Are you still are you feeling as emotionally bought into the NBA right now?
So definitely not my friends the same
Okay.
way they
Okay.
were like last year when the bubble came back. I had basketball on from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. because I didn't have it was my only buds in the house. I still watch a lot of
Yeah.
basketball now, but seeing actual humans in real life, so
Yeah.
it's not the same. But I think it has been interesting, the sort of changing of the guard to some degree that you're referring to. Because LeBron James is out in the first
Yeah.
round for
Yeah.
the first time ever.
Yeah.
And it's weird. There's a lot of reasons. Anthony Davis hurt
Yeah.
again, but it is making me start to think a little bit that we're not that far from having to be in a
Yes.
post LeBron
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Like every year, LeBron James in the play, write it
Oh
down.
yeah.
LeBron's in the playoffs, he's in the
Yeah.
finals. And it's one of those where it's just like, oh, wait, like, yeah, LeBron's getting old too. Like
Yeah.
we can't just assume we'll have this experience forever. And I was starting to kind of reflect on that, like, holy snap, like times are really about to change. And we've gone through this before with
Yeah.
Jordan and Kobe, but I guess for me, since LeBron is kind of our age, I'm like, oh, I really
That's
have grown up with
yes.
LeBron. Like
Yes.
I've seen this dude
Yes.
since he's been 16. He has been in my life for 20 years.
Yeah.
That is my homie. And it feels kind of strange to be like, okay, well, is this like the precipitous decline? Is this the time where just age, getting older as father times hit him? So that's made me had some feelings. But beyond that, it's been great to see some of the younger guys like seeing Trae Young balling out,
Yeah.
Devin Booker just shooting flames at the
Yeah.
Lakers and burying them at home. So that has been real exciting. Seeing the Clippers dig themselves out of a hole. Didn't know if that was going to happen. Kawhi Leonard proving that,
Yeah.
hey, I'm a top 50, top 30 guy, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
not losing to Luka Doncic.
No.
Sorry. Not
No.
going to, even though Luka had a nuts game. I think he put up 46 points, 14 rebounds
Yeah.
in the game they lost. So what else can he do? So I'm really excited to just see the newness. And I am disappointed by what I thought would be a great series of Bucks Nets. And the Bucks
Are just
are an extreme disappointment.
yeah. Yeah.
Because James Harden is out 43 seconds in. So this
Yeah.
three-headed monster is now a two-headed monster.
Yeah.
And the Bucks can do nothing. You had a bad game one. Okay, fine. You lose one. They got eviscerated last night. Like they were down 49 points at one point. And you're just like, okay, well, you guys are screwed. I mean, technically the series isn't over, but I see no way this team is going to beat the Nets 4 out of 5
No.
games.
No.
So I guess I don't know. One of my friends said, "Are the Nets really like the what's the Star Wars? The Darth Star? What's the in Star Wars? What's the big black ball
The
Death Star?
Black Star. I don't. Death Star. Death Star.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, are the Nets just the Death Star, impending doom coming to kill the world? I was like, yeah, I think they are, man. I think we've been pretending this whole time
Yeah.
that the Nets aren't just Death Star ready to destroy planets and every team you put in front of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, now to me it's really Nets versus the world because
Yeah.
they look awesome.
Isn't it strange to think of like an Eastern Conference team that we're just like, hey, who will get through the West to face this amazing team? It's always been since for 25 years, I would say it's always been, all right, who's gonna make it through who's gonna make it through the East to get work done? Not every year, but so many years you're like, who's gonna make it through? And then we're gonna, it's not, and now it's like, yeah, who's gonna make it through of these young teams, or maybe Kawhi gets together, or maybe it's the young guns out in Phoenix, whatever it is, and let's see who's gonna make it through to face this team that really on their day should not be beatable by another NBA team. I mean, really if everybody's healthy on their day, just seems like a team that isn't one that should lose a lot of games. But I'm with you on that comment earlier, man, about when the stars your similar age. I mean, LeBron was in high school senior year, I think, when we were in our sophomore year of college, you and I. And so he's from our. When he speaks, I can relate to him in many ways, right? You know, he seems like from a very similar generation. We're very similar ages, and to see him lose a step a little bit in age, like it affects me in an emotional way more than just him being a basketball player. If his era is ending, I'm thinking like, so now I'm officially always older than every athlete except Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Like it hurts. Like,
Right. Yeah, man, I'm with you. So I guess just to wrap up kind of on basketball, the other thing I was thinking about, what's the best story for a final? Me and my
yeah,
friend were talking. I was like going through all the different possibilities, and I settled on I think it's Suns Nets.
yeah, it
Because
is.
one, it would be Chris Paul finally making a final,
Yep.
right? So he can get that off. And then you got like Chris Paul versus James Harden. Y'all didn't get along on the
Right.
same team. Now you're going against each other. KD, well, this would be his third championship,
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and where does that put him in the overall landscape
Yeah.
of, top 15
For sure.
players? 10?
Yeah,
I
for
don't
sure.
know exactly where Katie is. And I'm like, okay, I can see a lot of stories on that. What I can bet, if you're the league, you are praying to every deity out there. It is not the Utah Jazz.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Right?
Let's be very
Because
honest.
I mean, hey, they're a great team,
Yeah, great
but
team.
you're like, okay, our ratings are going to be terrible if
No.
Utah's in here.
No.
Let's be real. here.
No.
So yeah, we'll see if this Suns Nets comes to fruition. Suns had a great game last night. So yeah, I'm definitely still keeping my head on basketball until we get to the Olympics, which I guess is still happening.
It's like
Question mark?
it's happening, but seemingly no one is really that psyched about it. Like I don't know about you. Have you run into anyone in the last month was like, "Hey, I'm super psyched for the Olympics. Are they happening?" Like no one has mentioned it to me in the news. It's the Japanese citizens, 82% in a recent poll said they don't want it to happen. It's only going to be Japanese people in attendance, Japanese citizens. So like it doesn't have the international spirit. A lot of the qualifying events didn't happen because of COVID. So they just kind of put the highest ranked person. Like for boxing, they didn't do a qualifying tournament. They just put the highest ranked amateurs. I don't know. I've never been a huge Olympics person because I just like the sports we care about more consistently. But I'd watch it. I'm zero hyped about the Olympics. Like zero. I'll watch the boxing. I don't know about you. I'll watch.
I mean, I'll catch someone that's on. I like watching track and field, some swimming. It's gymnastics.
Yeah.
There's some of these sports that are.
Yeah.
This is like an event, a reason to tune in. Where it's like, yeah, Simone Biles is great, but on a random tournament, I'm not here for it. But when she's on Team America going forward, cool. But no, I'm really asking people. I'm like, hey, are the Olympics actually happening? Because I don't I see an article about it here or there, and I still feel uncertain this is an event that is happening in what, a month and a half?
Oh yeah, no, like a month, like a month from now. I think it's happening. I'll give you one though. I like the idea of getting into other sports. When the last Olympics that happened were the Winter Olympics, right? And Liz and I, my wife and I, were watching ice dancing. And we started getting into ice dancing. So no, don't get. Hold on. I'm going somewhere with this. So figure skating is when they do all the spins and stuff, right? Like ice dancing is more about the choreography. It's more elegant. I'll be honest with you. Like to me, it looked pretty cool. Like you get into it there, but we're watching this. Get this. It's as real. The teams, most of the teams, they're married. They've worked together so long. It's natural, right? That they're married. That's very common. Then sometimes they're just friends, and it's always these awkward interviews like, my husband's so supportive. You're like, well, it's okay. You have a really weird job to work together, but you work really closely together because all these holds and all this stuff. And then there's one team from America. They show them, and we're like, wow, that team is really good, blah, blah. We're going for them. And they interview them after, and it's like, hey, is it hard being brother and sister doing this? And we're like, yeah, we just watched you grab all parts of her body. What did I just watch? Like, y'all are brother and sister? Like, get this off the... I mean, I know it's... I don't know how you would feel about it, but you can go watch it. They were brother and sister. We both were like, okay, but now you ruined ice dancing for me, NBC. Like, you can't be... And NBC want to talk about how they're so close and all this stuff. I'm like... I don't know. I don't want to watch brother and sister slow dance even at a wedding. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't want to watch that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'll be digging through YouTube to go see brother and sister ice dancing, but I get how you do get into different sports. I have gotten into curling during
Okay.
Winter
Yeah.
Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, out at a bar,
Oh
being
yeah.
like, hold up, dog. Let me see this lady from Canada brush this ice real quick to see where this puck's gonna go. Like, I've got into some wild stuff. But since you got into the ice dancing, on the Summer Olympics, do you get down with like rhythmic gymnastics?
I, I wouldn't say no. I, you know, I'll give it a try. I like it more than some of this, like when they show like people shooting rifles or something. I'm like, I don't know.
Mm.
It's like poof, hit the target. I'm like, what am I watching here? Like, I don't know. It looks the same, bow and arrow. I'm like, what am I watching here? Like,
Yeah.
I like it more than that. I put it in the middle ground of it. But what I guess what I like about both gymnastics and the ice dancing and the stuff is that like it's all about not making one little mistake. So even if you're like, you have no idea what's going on, if someone falls, right?
Mm.
So you're like, I don't need to know nothing about this. I just need to know, like, do you like stand up to the pressure? And that's interesting to me. It's just less interesting to me if it's a brother and sister grabbing each other in the crotch. That just becomes dramatically less interesting to me
Oh
at
man,
that
now
moment.
now I feel like we do need to dig out a YouTube
Oh,
video,
you
drop
do.
it in the show notes or something.
The
Like, go
holds
check this out.
the holds above the head are done in areas that are just not brother sister touch areas, and so that's all I'll say. It's just not. I can't. I'll tell you, I can't be the only. We can't. We both looked at each other like that. It just took the whole wind out of it. I'm not saying there should be rules involved, but there should be questions to be asked, Jeremy. I'm asking the questions that need to be.
Oh my
But
goodness. All right.
I
Well,
am.
on that note, I
Yeah.
think we'll keep it moving. But I know talked about boxing since
Yeah.
you are a big boxing fan. There was an exhibition here, Floyd Mayweather, and I am still unsure if it was Jake or
I think it
Logan
was
Paul.
Logan.
I think
It
Logan,
was Logan.
some influencer, Paul. Did you see any clips from that? To hear anything? What made it out there to you?
I saw it. I saw some clips. I mean, it's a 200-pound guy going up against a guy that's 155 pounds, which is odd, I would say, visually to see in a boxing ring because you would never see
Yeah.
that in a sanctioned fight. Um, I had a curiosity interest in it to read what would happen. I thought what would happen happened. Floyd's not really trying to knock the guy out, and he's really going to carry him. Um, weight in combat sports, having done combat sports, it does make a big difference. That being said, I fully believe if Floyd wanted to knock this man out, he absolutely could have.
See,
Yeah,
so that one I have to ask about because yes, obviously Logan Paul is just started training for
yeah,
boxing. I don't know, a few months or
yeah,
something, and Floyd's been doing this whole life. But if you just think of power, like if you're used to getting hit a little, again, I don't know how long Logan Paul's been doing this, but like a man hitting you 40 pounds smaller
yeah,
just generates a lot less force, regardless of
yeah.
how much of his life he's been doing this for. Um, I don't know if you can just floor someone who's that much bigger than you, man. Like that's a big difference.
I don't think you could just starch him. Like it. I mean, you could, but you won't have the leverage or the body position, right? The height is a big difference here as well, right? So I don't think Floyd could have just starched him and he just is like it's knocked out in the air. No, I don't think he could do that. But if if you think of like taking it back like the De La Hoya Bernard Hopkins fight where Bernard Hopkins ended his night with a left hook to the kidney, you could I think he could have stopped him with body shots.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is that I don't think Floyd was at any real risk of getting hit. I'll tell you, it's a very different level of skill. But when I was fighting for maybe 2 years, there was a guy in New York that was a New York Golden Gloves 3-time champion, so a very good amateur fighter. And I would
Mm.
spar with him sometimes. Very slick defensive fighter. I had about 20 pounds on him. If he didn't want me to hit him, I couldn't hit him. You know what I mean? And he wasn't
Sure.
Floyd Mayweather, So
Yeah.
like, I think Floyd could have gotten inside and just beat the crap out of the dude's body, broken ribs and shit and stuff like that. And I think he could have just stopped him from a pure bodywork perspective. No, I don't think he could have just starched him, but I think he could have
No.
stopped him. But it would have been obvious what he was doing, and it wouldn't have been some dramatic knockout. It would have just been like he would have just beat this guy up, basically.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. Like, obviously, Floyd, has Floyd ever even In his professional career, did he ever touch the canvas?
He did touch the canvas once. His glove touched the canvas. He got a little check hook, and it was like his 12th fight, and he touched his glove went down. He didn't get dropped, but his glove hit the ground. Has been had one official knockdown, and then you probably remember when he fought Shane Mosley in 2011. Shane did catch him with a flush overhand right, and he was hurt, and he held on, and he held Shane, and he didn't fall down. And you might argue that he should have been called a knockdown there, but really two marginal knockdowns in his, I would say, in his 50 fight career.
Right. So I agree with, like, obviously, Floyd's hard to hit. It didn't happen professionally. Yeah. He's 445 now. So you're a little slower, right? Yeah. But he's still got his whole angles and shoulders game if he wants.
Yeah.
But I think you can't overlook the risk of that man's also 40 pounds.
Oh, yeah. No, that's real.
So if he hits me even kind of clean, like, that's going to hurt a hell of a lot. And I think that's maybe one reason where Floyd has some reservation, because it's like, okay, this guy's not a professional boxer, but it looks like, what a Rocky movie where you're fighting a dude so much bigger than you. You're like, yo, I'm not risk, if I put my hand down one time on a cross and he gets laid out. Could you imagine if Logan Paul lays out Floyd Mayweather? Like, his whole career, like, he's been talked about forever. Like, you let this influencer knock you out, man.
No,
so I think he had to have some reservation. There are a couple of times I thought Floyd was kind of trying to put him down, though. Like, it was about maybe the fourth or fifth round where I think he's like, okay, like, I'm gonna try to lay this kid out. And then I think he hit him a couple times and was like, oh wait, like, this isn't just dropping him.
No,
and it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go back to kind of entertaining fight. I don't know if you heard here, though. So me and my buddies were ordering on the Showtime, and the Showtime app was just failing for hours. I'm texting other friends. It's easier for me to find illegal streams to stream the fight than to legally pay for it. I'm like, okay, if I was on the product team at Showtime, I can only imagine when your Slack chat's going nuts. You're just like, guys, what's happening? Why can't we? Why is the app still down? But it's like, this is not a surprise event. We knew this was going to happen. How could we not, quadruple the capacity allocation we think is needed for bandwidth or whatever's failing? Obviously, a lot of things could fail in your chain, but that's like guys, what are we doing here? Because now we're going to have to just be giving refunds out the butt. I don't know. We were very frustrated with a house full of folks over here.
Look, I mean, I read about it, like you said, just unimaginable for this to happen and breaking the confidence in the platform, especially when you're throwing down the money you're throwing down. But no, I think, well, hopefully they get their act together, because the other brother, Jake Paul, is fighting another MMA fighter in a boxing match. And
Woodley, right?
Woodley, yeah. And that one, I mean, Jake has been training boxing for like 3 years and has a much more, I would say, developed skill set, but they'll be the same size. And it's a real match, it's a real sanctioned match. So they'll be the same size. That one, I think, again, like, in the boxing community, people are torn on this stuff. Is it good or bad for the sport? But there's an interest, I would say, in these guys taking up the sport. And obviously, look, having done it, getting in the ring with someone that knows they're doing and having them punch you with 10-ounce gloves takes something. You might think whatever you want to think about these influencers, like, it takes something. It's not a pleasant experience. And so I do say that they have something in them that is, there's some grit in there. I will say Woodley's come out and said that he's going to take out the garbage and all this stuff. My prediction would be that people that do combat sports at the top of the world's game are insane human beings. They're like F1 drivers or whatever it is. They're genuinely crazy in ways, not saying they're bad people, but they're so different than you and I, Jeremy. Mm-hmm. And they have a killer craziness to them. I've seen enough of them firsthand that I will say this. I'm not a huge Tyron Woodley. I don't know a lot about him. I'm not a huge fan of his, nor not a fan of his. I know his striking ability is not his best out. I will say this. I would not want that individual this heated up before I got into a boxing ring with him. So I think that one, there will be fireworks. One of those two guys will not make it out of the fight. That is my prediction.
All right, looking forward to it. I heard a kind of suggestion on another podcast of, with all these kind of influencer fights getting a lot of attention, like, should we just get like a celebrity boxing league? Something going on, because like, this is just, people are interested in this. And like, if you say, hey, do you want to watch the Charlo fight,
Yeah.
people are like, who's a Charlo?
Yeah.
They'd have no idea.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see how this evolves, but yeah, they get eyeballs
Yeah.
for sure.
They do. Well, we'll see. Hopefully they can put some good, there's, a lot of great fighters between 135 and 147 pounds. A lot of great American fighters, great Mexican fighters, great British fighters in that range. And there have been some exciting scraps. And so it'd be interesting if they could start pairing some of the talent in the game and really bring a product that has both the social appeal and the boxing appeal and appeal to both sides. I think that's hey, look, the best fighters ever were also great promoters. Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, they're also great promoters. It's not just that these guys were good fighters. They sold their personality, and seeing what happened to them was part of why you watched. You either liked them or hated them, and you wanted to see. Floyd Mayweather, another perfect example. So I think that's something the fighters that are coming up, it's not always about, like, you take someone like Terrence Crawford, it's like, okay, you're a great fighter, you're from Nebraska, you're a meat and potatoes guy. Like, you got to give people a little more reason to care about what happens to you in this game. So we'll see if they take that on there. But last one as we wrap up, Jeremy, and tech. I know ransomware attacks are on the rise, and I just read today that some of the money paid out, most recent one, was actually tracked down. The Bitcoin was tracked down via some advanced NSA technology, and they sort of uncovered the source. What are you thinking about this? I mean, these have been going on for years, right? They have hit the public consciousness recently. They are increasing in frequency. How do you see it? You work in the industry. Is it something you're thinking about at work? Is it something you're talking about, or?
So not for us work. I mean, we typically have hackers coming for a lot of things, but we don't personally. And I'm not aware of any ransomware attacks, though it does happen to other some companies in similar industries, right? But I think what's changed more recently, instead of ransomware for just payment, as they all go for, is that the companies being infiltrated are like critical to infrastructure.
Yeah,
it's like an major oil pipeline on the east coast of the United States was turned off, right? That has significance, not just like, hey, game company this or software company that, we're going to release your code to the world. It's like, okay, yeah, this will suck that our source code's out there, and this will maybe make us easier to hack, but people can still get gas.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And the latest attack against the meat company, I forgot which one it was, but it's like, hey, we have to shut down meat production because of a ransomware attack. You're like, okay, is this going to flow down to beef costing more for weeks? Right? Like, this is going to impact people's actual lives. So to me, that's been the real change that I've noticed of the type of companies and industries getting attacked and having like real world consequences, not just XYZ company might make less money. It's you can't get gas in South Carolina today because of some hacker in Russia. Right. Like, that's a very different proposition. Now, the recovering of the currency sent, I'm real interested in how the heck does that even happen? Right. Like, sure, it's a public ledger for Bitcoin. You can see wallets and where they're going. You don't know who owns the wallet. Better yet, how do you get the key to access the wallet to get the Bitcoins back? I don't know if that story is ever going to be told. I imagine you need a lot of security clearance, but that was the wild aspect for me to hear.
That part. I mean, I've read the first part on how do you identify. There are these the people in the Bitcoin universe. One of the issues you have is that the blockchain can be worked backwards to find a point where I have an identity linked to a transaction, and I can work off that as a lead and get people to talk. So my guess would be that by working from the recipient wallets through all the washing machines they put them through, they get to something where they get an entity and they can put pressure on those entities. And ultimately, like most things, if you ever watch that show First 48 on A&E and you say, how are most murders solved? Somebody knows what happened and they tell. And then they put the evidence together, right? So if I had to guess, I'd say someone knew what happened and they told. Now, that would also play into that's how they got that they identified the areas of where the information might sit of them to go. But how they recovered the funds so quickly, that will be a story that I doubt will get out. But no, I wonder, if we'll see requirements to upgrade cybersecurity infrastructure. I mean, it wasn't until pretty late in the 20th century that the that we required to build buildings were up to certain levels that you couldn't just fall over and mess your neighbor up, right? So like, as we've seen technological developments, the fact that my failure can affect you has been there, and we have been, let's say, there's always been bad things that would happen before we recognize that need. And so I wonder to what extent there's not minimum basic standards being upheld. But to your point, it creates a risk for us all. It creates a security risk. It creates a societal risk. It creates a potential risk of food security and so forth. So, but the reason I get pessimistic is you look at the Senate and you think, do these people, when they do those hearings on cybersecurity and the questions they ask, it does not indicate they have a great understanding of the topic, you know? I mean, Rudy Giuliani took his iPhone in when he was the chief counsel for the President of the United States and handed it to someone at a Genius bar. You know, like, this isn't exactly, like, you don't have to be the best hacker in the world. He's giving it to you and giving you his password. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I've heard some whisperings or stories about, increased regulation for these critical infrastructure places. I don't know. It's tough, right? There's the, hey, you're not, like, you're just doing dumb stuff, right? Like, have different networks, right? Like, okay, we can have different networks, but bad actors will remain. So it is, even if you're doing your best, it is no guarantee that bad things won't happen. But we'll see. I'm sure in the next week or two we'll hear about more ransomware attacks that have popped up.
Well, let's track it. And I know we are at time, and we got to remind everyone. Look, we appreciate the support you're feeling. You know how to get in contact with us. If you're watching on YouTube, all the information at the bottom of the screen. If you're on a podcast platform, hit follow, tell your friends, reach out to us, tell us what you think about the show, what you'd like us to talk about. And we're on every week, and we'll see you next week. Jeremy, any parting shots from you?
No, just hit us up, Choppers.
All right, Choppers. We'll see you next week.